Authentic is sponsored in whole by Voice of Prophecy.
If you've ever been tempted to feel like life might be a little bit futile, that maybe you're wasting your time by investing in your future because, well, you're just going to die anyway, I think you're going to want to see what we've got going on today's episode of Authentic.
Welcome to Authentic. Shawn Boonstra explores real existential questions about the meaning of your life and how you can live a genuine human existence. Listen every week right here on this station or on your favorite podcatcher. Here's Shawn with this week's episode of Authentic.
From what I understand, the world's population is rapidly approaching the 8 billion mark. And when you subtract daily deaths from daily births, you realize there's about 100,000 new people coming into this world every single day. Now, that's a number that I can't wrap my head around. I mean, what are the odds that you're actually going to meet 100,000 people in your lifetime, let alone all 8 billion? It's just an awful lot of people. And to think that there were only a little more than 3.5 billion the day I was born. It means that more people have been born since my first appearance than actually existed at the moment the doctor cut my umbilical cord. Now, the very best estimates that I can find, according to an article published by the BBC, well, they suggest something like 107 billion people have now lived on planet Earth, which means that all the people alive right now only represent about 7.5% of all the people who have ever lived. So, here's what bothers me about this. I know a lot of people worry about the limited resources we have on this planet, and there are people who fear that eventually we're not going to be able to feed everybody. Some of you might remember a popular book that came out in 1968, the year before I was born. It was called The Population Bomb. It kind of suggested more than 50 years ago that we were on the verge of a global apocalypse because, well, the population was growing way too fast. It was written by Paul Ehrlich, a biologist at Stanford, and his first line kind of scared the stuffing out of millions of people. He said, "The battle to feed all of humanity is over." In other words, millions of people were about to starve to death, and a couple of years after this book was published, Dr. Ehrlich predicted that we had something like 15 years left before mass starvation basically wiped all of us out. Of course, none of that came true. In fact, there are now people arguing that our global population is about to decrease for any number of reasons. So that's not really what gets my attention when somebody mentions 8 billion people or 107 billion people. I think what bothers me most is the sheer potential that 8 billion human brains represents. I mean, think about the number of thoughts that roll around in your own brain every single day. I know they're not all brilliant. I know that mine aren't. But think about how active your mind is on a daily basis. Now multiply that by 8 billion and think about how much mental information is being processed minute by minute all over the world. Then go back in history and think about the way that a tiny handful of people have actually changed the world with just a few powerful thoughts. I mean, a lot of you are watching this or listening to this on the internet, and that was somebody's brainchild just a few decades ago. Now, maybe you're not old enough to remember life without the internet, but let me tell you, if that's the case, you have no idea how much this has changed the world forever. One thought changed the world. How would anybody live without the internet? Or I think about a guy like William Röntgen back in 1895 who was fooling around in his lab one day when he suddenly noticed a fluorescent screen would mysteriously glow every time he turned on an electron beam, even if there was something sitting between the beam and the screen. And I don't know if this was smart or not, but eventually he stuck his hand in between and he saw his bones on the screen. That gave us the X-ray, an invention that I've, well, unfortunately had to use a lot over the years. Think about something as simple as Teflon, which not only gave us non-stick cooking, a delightful invention to be sure, but we also discovered that the body doesn't reject Teflon. And so now we use it in all kinds of replacement body parts. And then think about all the poetry and the music and the art that has come from a handful of people over the centuries. These kinds of people only represent a tiny sliver of the human population. And because they bothered to write things down, or because they were in the right place at the right time and had all the right opportunities, all of us benefit from their thoughts. So now I've got to wonder, how many important thoughts never make it to the rest of the world? You've got to think, if we've already had 107 billion people on this planet, there's just a lot of great thinking that never goes anywhere. We never learn about it. We lose something like 150,000 people every single day. And the moment they die, a lifetime of thinking just evaporates. It reminds me of something you read in the ancient book of Psalms, where it says, "His spirit departs, he returns to his earth, in that very day his plans perish." In some English translations of the Bible, it says, "In that very day his thoughts perish." Your thoughts are gone. And so you've got to wonder what all of us lose when a single human being goes to the grave, never having shared some of the most important thoughts that crossed his or her mind while he or she was still alive. Now multiply that by 150,000 people a day, or multiply it by the 99 billion who have already died, and ask yourself this: how many opportunities have we lost? How many brilliant ideas never made it out into the open because somebody never had an opportunity or maybe even the desire to share them? But then think about the people who do manage to write this stuff down. Back in the day, before the internet, I used to go to the library every single week. I would ride there on my bike. And I used to think about the fact that there was no way I would ever be able to read all those books on the shelf. And this was a small town with a really tiny library. Thousands and thousands of books, and there was no way in a single lifetime I was ever going to be able to read all of them. It's not possible. Then, when you consider the information explosion taking place on the internet every single day, the problem gets even worse. According to one source I looked at a few months ago, more than 2.5 quintillion bytes of data is generated every single day. That's quintillion. That's a 1 with 30 zeros. Even if all 8 billion of us all around the world were working on this day and night, there's absolutely no way we could ever consume that much information. So I guess that's the thing that bothers me most. Just the sheer opportunity cost, the daily loss of unique people with great ideas and dreams and valuable insights. I mean, realistically, I know there's no way we could listen to everybody all the time, but it still bothers me that most people's lives just end unacknowledged. Maybe their families and close friends remember them, but let a couple of generations pass by, and at best, most of us are nothing but names on tombstones. All of your experience is now just gone. So I'm sure you're wondering where in the world I'm going to go with all of this. And now you're going to have to endure a really quick break if you want to find out.
Life can throw a lot at us. Sometimes we don't have all the answers. But that's where the Bible comes in. It's our guide to a more fulfilling life. Here at the Voice of Prophecy, we've created the Discover Bible Guides to be your guide to the Bible. They're designed to be simple, easy to use, and provide answers to many of life's toughest questions. And they're absolutely free. So jump online now or give us a call and start your journey of discovery.
This is Authentic with Shawn Boonstra and the Voice of Prophecy.
The Library of Alexandria was one of the most important contributions ever made to human civilization. It was the brainchild of a guy by the name of Demetrius of Phalerum, a guy most of you have never heard of, who lived about 300 years before Christ. He was a tyrant who ruled the city of Athens because Alexander the Great put him in charge. But of course, as predicted in the Bible's book of Daniel, Alexander died and his empire was divided among 4 of his generals: Cassander, Seleucus, Lysimachus, and Ptolemy. Ptolemy took over the north of Africa, which put the city of Alexandria under his control, and he invited Demetrius to move across the sea and join him as a court philosopher. It was a pretty big promotion, so of course Demetrius jumped at the chance, and while he was there, he supervised the construction of the world's most famous library. What Ptolemy wanted to do is collect all the world's knowledge in one single place. Thanks to the gift of writing, they were able to gather information from every culture around them and preserve it all in one location. This was kind of like an ancient internet where you could find just about anything you wanted on just about any topic. Some people think there may have been as many as 400,000 scrolls in this library, which might not sound like much after we talk about quintillion, but when you consider that all these scrolls were actually written by hand and had to basically travel on horseback, this represented a lot of information. Now, today, the whole Alexandrian library is gone because in 48 BC, Julius Caesar accidentally burned it down. Not all of it, but a big chunk of it, because his soldiers were busy burning the docks in the harbor, and that fire got out of control and got the library. And that was the beginning of the end, because even if some of the library managed to survive, what was left would have been finished off when the Emperor Aurelian burned down the city again about 300 years later. So think about this. Try to imagine what we lost. We had this comprehensive collection of ancient knowledge gathered from all over the world, and now it's just gone. We really have no idea what was in there. I mean, today we can't really explain how the pyramids were so masterfully constructed, so you've got to wonder, what if there was a book in that library that explained it? For centuries, people have wondered what in the world Plato was talking about when he mentioned a place called Atlantis. And now the internet is full of conspiracy theories because we don't really know. What if there was a book in that library that just told us where Atlantis was, who lived there, and what happened to them? Can you imagine what we lost when 400,000 scrolls just disappeared in smoke? Today, archaeologists are forced to piece together the past by digging through broken pottery and reading these bits and pieces of shattered tablets. These things are missing information, and there's a really good likelihood that once upon a time the Alexandrian library had scrolls that told all these stories in remarkable detail. It makes me think that one of the reasons we're so blind when it comes to ancient history is because somebody destroyed our record of the past. It really is an absolute tragedy. And this is something I think about all the time because as far as I'm concerned, there are no little people. There are no inconsequential minds. What we have living all around us are people who are experiencing the world from their own unique perspective. And they're experiencing God from their own unique perspective. And you've got to wonder how much richer our own experience would be if we had access to all that information. But we don't. And you never will. Because even if it was possible to preserve all that data, the thoughts of 107 billion people, you and I have a hard deadline in this life. Most of us only get 70, 80, maybe 90 years, and then it's over. This is easily one of the biggest frustrations about being mortal. There isn't time to learn and explore everything that interests you. It reminds me of another ancient passage, this one from the book of Ecclesiastes, which is a book of ancient wisdom. Here's what it says. All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Now, man, isn't that the truth? I'm kind of ripping this verse out of its context, but one lifetime isn't nearly long enough to satisfy the curiosity of your eyes and ears. You can study and learn and explore decade after decade, and it will never be enough. Now, that's not really what the author was saying, and I'm ripping it out of context a little bit, but ask yourself, are you ever really going to be finished learning? Will you ever come to the point where you don't want to see something new or hear something new? Unless you're the victim of depression, I really doubt it. You know, Albert Einstein once said, "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious." And from what I know about his story, that was absolutely true. His elementary school teachers actually thought he was a dummy. This wasn't some kind of child prodigy like Mozart. This was a kid who actually struggled with math. And yet the product of his curious mind completely revolutionized the world of science forever. It was his passionate curiosity that disrupted the work of Isaac Newton and opened up the human race to a whole new universe of possibilities. So, what about all the other curious minds? Given the right opportunities, what would they discover? And why do I even have a passionately curious mind if I'm just going to die? What's the sense of packing my brain full of information for 70 or 80 years and then all that data just disappears the day that I do? Why would I be wired like this? How does this make sense? Let me take you back to that same passage again now in the book of Ecclesiastes, and this time we'll read it in its original context. Here's what it says. "What profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun?" In other words, what's the point of putting in a lifetime of effort? One generation passes away, and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. In other words, one day we're all going to die, and the world's just going to go on without us. The sun also rises, and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it arose. The wind goes toward the south and turns round to the north. The wind whirls about continually and comes again on its circuit. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. So what he's describing is the endless cycle of the world, and he's wondering, why do you and I exist in a place like this? We have cognitive abilities, we have curious minds, and yet somehow we get turned off after a few short decades and the world keeps on going without us. Verse 8 again. "All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing." So here's what he's really saying. And I think I should explain this a little bit because I took a few liberties with that passage the first time I read it. Even if you did live longer, even if you had a 1,000-year lifespan, it wouldn't be enough. Because what your heart craves more than anything else in the world cannot be found by accumulating more information. I mean, let's say I did have the ability to harvest the thoughts of 8 billion people. Would that be enough? Would I finally come to a place where I can say, man, now I know what I've been missing, now I know enough, and my mind is finally at rest? The answer is no. Because what you're really looking for is not more knowledge. What you're looking for is the source of that knowledge, the answer to the puzzle of our existence. By sorting through more and more data, your mind is trying to discover the reason you're here. To put it simply, what you're really looking for is God. And until you find Him, your mind is going to be forever restless. Now, I've got to take another quick break because that's the way it works around here, but I'll be right back after this.
Here at the Voice of Prophecy, we're committed to creating top-quality programming for the whole family, like our audio adventure series, Discovery Mountain. Discovery Mountain is a Bible-based program for kids of all ages and backgrounds. Your family will enjoy the faith-building stories from this small mountain summer camp and town. With 24 seasonal episodes every year and fresh content every week, there's always a new adventure just on the horizon.
This is Authentic with Shawn Boonstra and the Voice of Prophecy.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, we've been talking about all the knowledge that disappears from this planet on a daily basis, how we lose something like 150,000 people every single day, and all their thoughts are just gone. What a loss that is. And then we talked about the fact that one short lifetime seems like a pretty raw deal because you were born with this insatiably curious mind, and you're never going to have the time to satisfy your curiosity, at least not completely. Then I posed a question about what it is that you're actually looking for in the first place. I mean, I know that I'm personally curious about just about everything. I like science, I love music, I like philosophy, I like psychology, I like theology. I like just about everything that people like to study. And part of that is because I'm just a wide-eyed kid who happened to be born in a big, interesting world that has a lot to offer. But you've always got to wonder, what am I actually looking for? Why do I think it's important to learn anything? I mean, we all know you have to learn something if you're going to earn a living. But beyond that, why do I feel the need to keep on studying? Why are documentaries and books so fascinating? Why do I always want to see something new? And what is it that gives me this audacious notion that there's actually something valuable out there to learn? If you think about it, if you didn't believe the universe had a purpose, and you didn't think there was some kind of order to our existence, that would mean that there is nothing useful out there to learn. And yet something hardwired into our brains tells us this isn't true. So what in the world are you looking for? Let me show you another ancient passage, this time from the book of Jeremiah. And I think there's a chance I've read this on the show at least once before because this is one of my personal favorites. So bear with me. We're going to read it again, and you'll probably hear me read it again and again and again in the future. Here it comes. It's Jeremiah chapter 9, starting in verse 23. It says, "Thus says the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom." Now, let me push the pause button right there because that's kind of a bitter pill to swallow when you happen to love knowledge. Of course, knowledge isn't exactly the same as wisdom. Wisdom is knowing what to do with your knowledge. And if you read the rest of this book, there's absolutely no doubt that this book places a very high value on acquiring wisdom. In fact, most of the book of Proverbs advises us to seek wisdom, and in the book of James it says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him." So here in the book of Jeremiah, it's not really saying that wisdom isn't important, because it is. And of course, you don't want to be the opposite of wise, which would be foolish. And the Bible clearly advises against becoming a fool. So what is Jeremiah saying? Well, let's read the whole thing. "Thus says the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom. Let not the mighty man glory in his might, nor let the rich man glory in his riches." Now here it comes, the important part. "But let him who glories glory in this, that he understands and knows me." Here's what's hiding behind your insatiable desire to learn. You're not just filling your brain with mountains of trivia for no particular reason. You're out there looking for something. I mean, if it's just a matter of accumulating knowledge, it's really a pretty depressing enterprise, because the moment you die, it's over. The information is gone, and all that effort was for nothing. And honestly, it wouldn't make sense, at least not as far as the universe is concerned. Why would the universe produce all these thinking, feeling, curious people if it's just going to amount to nothing? I mean, why didn't we make our entrance into this universe as mere sea cucumbers, who, as far as I can tell, aren't really curious about much besides what they're going to have for lunch? Why are you as a human so sophisticated? Why are you so inquisitive? Who pushed the button to make you this way? It says, "Let him who glories glory in this, that he understands and knows me, that I am the Lord." This is what you're looking for. This is what you're hoping to find under that vast mountain of data. There is somebody who put you here, and then he gave you a questioning mind so that you would find him. And if you understand that, if you understand that this is what you're looking for, I promise you, you're going to find some peace of mind. And you will come to the finish line of your life completely satisfied because you've realized your ultimate purpose. That book, the book of Jeremiah, it was written to a group of people who had been conquered by the Babylonians. And a lot of them were going to spend the rest of their lives in captivity. And if you think that life can feel a little meaningless when you're free, it can really hit home when your one and only lifetime gets completely used up doing the bidding of your overlords. It was an oppressive way to live. And so here's what Jeremiah said to the people who were just beginning that life of captivity. And you will seek me, it's God speaking, and you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. I will be found by you, says the Lord, and I will bring you back from your captivity. So, how in the world does this all matter to you? Well, think about this. You're a captive to this world, and there's a part of you that is looking for something much better than this place, the way that you're currently experiencing it. So don't you go away. I'm going to be right back.
Dragons, beasts, cryptic statues. Bible prophecy can be incredibly vivid and confusing. If you've ever read Daniel or Revelation and come away scratching your head, you're not alone. Our free Focus on Prophecy guides are designed to help you unlock the mysteries of the Bible and deepen your understanding of God's plan for you and our world. Study online or request them by mail and start bringing prophecy into focus today.
Welcome back. It's Authentic with Shawn Boonstra and the Voice of Prophecy.
Okay, so here's what happened. I talked too much and we're out of time for another week. But here's what I want you to think about until we can meet again. The one that you're actually looking for says he can be found. He's what you're going to find under that mountain of information that swirls past your brain every single day. And when you find him, he can take you out of the captivity of a meaningless life and bring you right into his presence, where he guarantees you'll be learning new stuff forever. And all of that knowledge you've been picking up for an entire lifetime, well, if you take all that and compare it to this book, it's all going to fall together in a beautiful pattern and help you understand the infinite mind of God. And according to what that God says in this book, you're going to keep on using what you've been learning for a very, very, very long time. That's all the time we've got for another week, though. You chew on that until we're together again. I'm Shawn Boonstra, and this has been another episode of Authentic.
You've been listening to Authentic, sponsored by Voice of Prophecy. Remember, you can listen every week right here at the same time. And thank you. Authentic is funded by listeners just like you. You can support at voiceofprophecy.com. That's also where you can find all the episodes you missed, or where you can listen again. That's voiceofprophecy.com.
Retirement planning can be stressful, but it doesn't have to be. Call the friendly people at the Voice of Prophecy and learn about all your options based on your specific needs. Just give us a call at 1-800-348-5993.